Once that comma for the $1 million dropped off of the balance of her account, sure, that's when she realized something was wrong.
Winner, gagnant.
Hey, I'm Adam.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And this is Poutine Politics, Canadian issues served with cheese curds.
So in this episode, it will be all about the lottery and why it's not what you may think it is.
What do you mean?
So what I mean by that is I lay claim to the idea that the lottery as it is right now is basically a poor people's tax. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know any millionaires that are playing the lottery to get more millions. The thing about the lottery is that most people don't even realize the odds are severely stacked against you. If you look at like the Super 7 or the Lotto 649, you're looking at 1 in 7 million or 1 in 42 million to even try to come close to winning it. That's the odds. And when you look at it like that, you're like, well, why do you play the lottery? And, you know, what they try and sell you on is hope. Look at the dream that you can have. Oh, yay, it's great. And you know who's selling that dream? The government's selling you that dream. Something fishy's going on here.
Why is the government selling that dream, though?
Because they want the money from the lottery, depending on where you're from. But in Ontario, it's the OLG. They then distribute it according to after they have to pay all their people. But essentially, when it comes down to it, it's about a third of the revenue that they directly get goes to the government. So for every dollar you spend, a third of it goes to the government. That's all good and all. And people like, you've probably heard that, oh, it goes towards education and all these other fun stuff. Yeah, well, what happened to the money that was going towards education? Oh, that goes somewhere else. They're not going to tell you where that goes, but that goes somewhere else. So the premise here is that where you think the lottery is all good, it's fine. If you understand the mechanics behind the lottery is fine. And I wouldn't say that, you should eliminate the lottery, because that's not true. I mean, I have played the lottery before, and when I went in to play the lottery, I asked the circuit, here's my lottery. How do I make the lottery go? What do I tick? Oh, fantastic. Okay, good. And I go over there and I circle the number. Do I have to need a number 2 pencil to do this with? Oh, it's over. The pencil's over. Oh, fantastic. Okay, great. I don't play it that much, we'll say, because I know the odds. But it is fun to hope. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. However, here's the hardcore truth. When you look at it, most people that are playing, they're addicted to playing. So not everyone's playing. The math on it is, you get X number of people in a population. 75% of them are going to be the lower earnings people that are contributing to the government's tax collection or revenue. Of those people, only 50% of them are even going to be playing. Of the amount of money that's generated, the average person that plays, and I'm talking about the person who doesn't play, that's, trying to get by on minimum wage, salary, or whatever. The average person that plays, the person who goes to buy the lottery tickets every week, they will spend probably $750 a year. That $750 is terrible on so many levels. One, it's gambling addiction. We need more gambling problems?
Not really. We tend to already have an issue there. I looked up some numbers in regards to this, knowing that we were going to be talking about this topic. So the OLG. So we're looking at Ontario here. Every province is going to be different, but since 1, we're in Ontario, and 2, Ontario is the biggest province in the country, easy numbers to find. OLG generated almost $7.5 billion in revenue in 2015, 2016. Half of that money came from lottery. That's a staggering amount of money. Obviously, it's easier to play the lottery than go to the casino, but that's still almost $4 billion, $3.78 billion to be specific in that report. And Mike's right. When you divide that against the whole population of the province, it's $280 a person. But when you consider the fact that kids obviously can't play, and most likely the rich don't play, and not everybody of the rest of that population plays, then it ends up being an average of $750 a person. I will admit for myself, I play when the jackpot's high, and I don't even do that every single time that the jackpot is high. So I would think maybe in a given year I might spend $150. So I'm even below that average as someone who does play.
And the reason why I say I always like to claim that it's poor people tax, because the government's ratcheting it up. The government has a choice. They have levers and dials, as I like to say. They can choose where to turn things up and where to turn things down. If you're choosing to turn up it on the lottery, for instance, because you think it's an excellent source of revenue, which I'll even prove that it's not even a great source of revenue, then you're just targeting one group. And to ignore it because, well, it's certain people, it's not. The majority of the people that are playing this are lower incomes, so you're not getting rich people to play it, but you're getting the lower income people to play it. And the reality is that the idea of the lottery is to, generate some money, because people do want to have the ability to hope and dream. That's great. That's what all the commercials say. Oh, live your dream and all that kind of stuff. But you don't need 16 different lotteries, like 2 different lottery systems with different picks, with different things on it. You don't need the scratch tickets. You don't need all those different devices that people become addicted to over and over again that don't do the purpose that they serve. Like, you could gain so much more money just by raising a small portion, because the lottery only makes up 0.5% of the budget for revenue generated for Ontario. Like, what are you doing? Why are you charging people $750 a year, some, not all, to gain 0.5% of the budget? That doesn't make any sense. The math isn't there. It's just not. And the other problem, too, is most lottery winners go bankrupt. What? So they get all these millions and they don't know how to spend it because they never had any practical purpose for it. And then they go bankrupt because, again, they've never had money, so they don't know what to do with it. So they make bad decision after bad decision. Because, if you had $1 million, what would you really do with it? Do you know?
To kind of show the point here that Mike's making as well, especially about the people that win the lottery and go bankrupt. I remember, if you went onto Google and you looked it up, maybe picking the right keywords might be difficult, but I remember there being a story in the Toronto Star about a woman who won, I think it was $11 or $12 million in the lottery. And it's exactly that situation. It was I've got money now, so it's lavish parties, big vacations. I remember one of the things she did was she opened her own store. It was a chocolate store, so it was like making custom chocolates and treats and things like that. And that was one of the things that she did. And the store ended up closing because it didn't do well. But she spent a lot of money on that, and she didn't realize she had a problem. And this is right. This is from the article. She didn't realize she had a problem until her bank account was no longer 7 digits. So once that comma for the $1 million dropped off of the balance of her account, that's when she realized something was wrong. Not after she lost half of the money. After she lost over 90% of it. After she spent over 90% of it. That's when she had to change. Now, thankfully, she didn't go bankrupt. But that's a lot of money to lose. And if I remember correctly, I'm going to look the story up to see if I remember everything to do with it. But I want to say it was over the course of 3 or 4 years. So this person who essentially had never really had money before went through $11 million in 4 years.
Yeah, and there was a guy in the UK that won the lottery and decided that he wanted to make his own smash-up derby course. So he bought all the houses in and around his place, so that way he'd have a massive backyard that he could run cars into, so that way he could have his own in-city smash-up derby course. Needless to say, that man went bankrupt in 2 years, but this is the kind of thing where when you think you have all the money in the world, you just spend on whatever you want to, whatever lavish thing, without realizing, because you never learned how money accumulates, that this can be a really bad thing. This can really cause bad problems. And that's when you win. Now, other people play the lottery all the time. Like, they will they will buy an entire bin of lottery tickets, like spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on lottery tickets, hopefully trying to get to the bottom of it and win the the $20 cash prize at the bottom of it. And it's just almost absurd that you think that this is a good solution. And I see it time and time again. The reality is that there are ways that you can make money. Dreaming on a lottery, that's fantastic. Like if you think that you'll be able to do this one dream. The reality though is that government should step in and realize that turning up the dials for lottery, making people spend more money, have the ability to spend more money on lottery tickets and things like that, that's not going to help solve problems. You're not going to gain that much from winning lotteries that it would make sense. Like the government's not going to gain that much revenue from lottery corporation and be able to balance a budget result. But they constantly want to promote the idea. And then you have the whole idea of gambling. Like you're just promoting gambling, which is a terrible, terrible idea, and it's a blight on society that the government has to pay for. So you're increasing that. You're increasing a health problem by making it more accessible and encouraging that. That doesn't make any sense.
So I'd like to point out here as well. So from the same what OLG calls their social responsibility report from 2015 and 2016 to go along with what Mike was saying. So again, we're going to go back to that number of nearly $7.5 billion in revenue. And from that report, there's two different line items. It's probably multiple programs, but two different line items in particular. But when you put the numbers together, they only spent $54 million of that $7.5 billion in revenue on programs related to problem gambling.
That's less than 1% for a real number. That's just throwing pennies at a problem. That's not solving the problem. That's just throwing pennies after pennies after pennies after pennies into a forever long well. Like you're never going to fill up that bucket. It's always going to be a problem.
See, the OLG actually has a program for their casinos, and I'm sure again the other lottery corporations across the country likely do as well. But for their casinos, for problem gamblers to voluntarily add themselves to a list to be banned from the properties. Now, under certain circumstances, obviously each property, each casino, and OLG as a whole can likely make the decision themselves to say, you know what, that person can't come here anymore. But there's literally a voluntary opt-in program, which if a person realizes they have a problem, I'm glad they have an option to say, look, I can't control myself, so please put me on this list so that if I do try to come into a casino and gamble and spend money, so on and so forth, you will show me the door. I'm glad that they have that option because there are people that realize that they have a problem. But it takes certain people a long time to admit that they have that problem, and some people will never admit that they have the problem. So it feels like they need to do more. They need to be able to do more. And like you said, it's less than 1% of the total revenues that they generated that goes into programs to help with these kinds of issues.
Yeah, and they're not making money. Like the reality is that the government's not making money off these lottery things, and they think that because it does make some money, that it's a great, fantastic way, and they can say, "Oh, look at what we're doing. We're making a lottery, and it's great because we generate all this income, and we also are making all of somebody's dreams come true because somebody has to win." Yes, somebody has to win, but everyone loses. That's the problem. So the government, in this case, has the option of turning down that dial, but they're turning it up, right? Like there's more ways you can gamble, and this happens all the time. So, they're increasing the number of casinos. I don't really want to get into the casino aspect of it necessarily, but they are making more casinos. They are making more ways that you can go on to your phone and things like that and gamble. And it's just, this isn't a good way of getting tax dollars. You want to gain tax dollars, there are much better ways and much more effective ways. Because if you have to spend so much money, if you're only getting 32 cents back on the dollar, just get the full dollar, right? Like tax them at that. Like you don't have to raise taxes an enormous amount to replace that income. It's so little. Like we're not talking a family would have to spend, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You could easily get it back.
Well, you'd split the tax burden over more people, which again, I guess the people that don't pay the lottery would say, or play the lottery would say, well, why should I have to pay this tax to make up for the fact that you're not generating revenue from the lottery anymore? Why should it be my responsibility if I'm not playing? And you have to take responsibility somewhere, as an individual, as a group, as a society, as a government, whatever. Another thing that, especially in advertising, that OLG tends to point to is charitable givings. So that was another thing that, because we hear so much about it, we think that a large portion of the money that is made is going to charitable givings. And so again, I point to the 2015-2016 Social Responsibility Report that was released by OLG. So again, remember, $7.5 billion of revenue. So if you add up the money that they specifically state goes towards charities, local, provincial charities, or even they do have a line there for sponsorship of community festivals and events, we are talking about $150 million roughly.
So maybe 3%. And if they want to sponsor a charity, to just sponsor a charity. You don't have to do it through lottery gamings. You can just give the people the money directly. That would be a much easier solution to the problem. The government has a choice. They can continue on this path of, increasing the lotteries and everything like that, making people more and more dependent on the lottery without providing any solutions. And the other kicker too, is that a lot of these people on the education spectrum, they're, I wouldn't say lower educated, but they're not as intelligent because they've never been taught anything different, right? If you grow up and you don't understand statistics and you've never taken anything with regards to that, you don't know how bad the lottery is. Like, you're more likely to be a lottery in the U.S., some of those mega millions, you're more likely to be bitten by a shark and struck by lightning at the exact same time than you are to win that lottery. So it's the absurdity of it. And if we were all better educated with those kind of things, then it wouldn't be an issue. But they're not going to put money towards that because it's a money-making scheme. And it's a terrible money-making scheme. Like, there's nothing good about it. Like, it'd be different if, the government was making all this money and it was directly making it, but they have to pay all these other people. And let's not even get to the fact. Do you remember the big, huge lottery problems that they had with people like convenience stores?
Yes, and that's why we had to start signing our lottery tickets.
Yeah, because it was such a great system that the government did such a good job with. They had to start signing it because there was an exponential amount of people, because it was run by private corporations, and they figured out that, oh, wait a minute, if this person doesn't realize that they've won, because people play lottery so much that don't even know if they've won or not, I can now win $1 million. Well, I'm going to take advantage of that. And there was a few cases where they eventually got settled by OLG, again, costing us money as a result. Please understand that if a lawsuit happens and they have to settle, it's not the government that settles it. The government, yeah, sure, they have to pay for it, but it ultimately is you that pays for it. There was just an absurd amount, and it was statistically a 1 in 600 million chance that the number of people that were winning, that were convenience store owners, that was a possibility, and it was so far the margin of error, it wasn't even funny. So they really had to cut down, and that's why they had you signing tickets. That's why now when you go through the machines, it says winner, which is annoying when you're in a grocery store lineup. That's another story for another day. But the bottom line is that the government can do more, and they should, because there's no reason why we need this many lottery tickets. Like, just get rid of half of them, and it won't save anything. It won't cause any problems. The government's money supply is not going to come to a collapse. And if you really want to, you can charge me an extra cent somewhere, and I think it'd be fine.
So I think a case in point with this as well is within the last maybe month or two. So it's June 2019 right now, and within the last month and a half, I believe it is, they added another draw for Lotto Max. So it used to just be on the Friday. That's the one that was going up to the maximum of $60 million jackpot plus the $1 million max million draws that you could win. So they've now added a Tuesday draw. So it's similar to the Lotto 649, which has been Wednesdays and Saturdays. So now the Lotto Max is Tuesdays and Fridays. And they increased the jackpot to go up to a maximum of 70 million. But I know so far since they introduced the second draw, the highest it's gone is 65 million. But it seems like to compensate for that, they've also lowered the number of the $1 million max million draws that could win. So they are compensating for it in some way. But by adding another day for people to be able to buy lottery tickets, it's a revenue generation game. And which we can point at the situation that's going on in Ontario with the budget deficit that we have, and this is another way for the government to raise more money to help try and close that deficit. Whether that's the decision behind it, I think that's probably the decision behind it, but it's not going to help. It's not going to be enough. It's going to generate more revenue. Hopefully it'll go towards the hospitals. Hopefully it'll go towards good things, but it shouldn't be at the cost of the people that really can't or shouldn't afford it, or shouldn't be buying, or again the problem gamblers or whatever. It's not gonna make me buy more lottery tickets.
It's not gonna do enough. The reality is, even with the extra draws and the extra, it's not gonna do enough to balance the budget, and it's targeting the wrong people because those people need the more money in their wallets as it is. And it's not an effective way of collecting money. You can just raise the taxes by such a minor amount that people wouldn't even notice the difference. Like, you could make it on on the tax returns. You could do it there and people would never notice. And that's the problem and you could say, instead of making more lotteries, we're going to raise the taxes. And it's a much better way of doing it. It's just, and you would have to do it so trivially. Like, how many people would notice a 0.5% increase in their taxes? I wouldn't. And that's the problem, that they're not realizing that, you could raise the taxes without having these lottery situations which run into problems after problems after problems after problems.
I think that covers everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'm Adam.
I'm Mike.
And this has been Poutine Politics.
No prize. Aucun lot.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Poutine Politics. Be sure to keep up with us online and through social media. Our website is poutinepolitics.ca. You can find us on Facebook at Poutine Politics. You can find us on Instagram at Poutine Politics. You can find us on Twitter at Politics Poutine, because Twitter thought we were French. We're on YouTube. We also started a Patreon page at Patreon, patreon.com/Poutine Politics. We hope we entertained you enough that you can show us some love and maybe some money. We'll be back next week